Welcome back. John Becker here, along with Chris Dupre, sales coach, sales expert, marketing expert, a few different expertises in here. And today our topic will be about using AI to help you train your sales team. And if you're a salesperson, using it to help you train yourself and improve the things that you do. So stick around, it's going to be a great discussion. I want to start by giving you a statistic and hearing your reaction. Nearly 70% of all salespeople say that they have not received any formal training in sales. Nearly 70%. Instead, they describe themselves as, quote, self-taught social sellers. That's according to research from Task Drive. What's your take on that? Does that surprise you?
I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me. But it has me shaking my head, just the simple idea that the thing that truly is the lifeblood of the organization, right? And it's not that sales is the most important, but let's be real, organizations, whether they are for profit or not, need to generate some sort of cash flow in order to survive and thrive. And so the fact that 70% of the workforce whose job it is to generate those inflows of cash are self-taught social sellers, it's pretty scary, man.
I agree. But like you, it doesn't surprise me. I think there are people who you always hear those phrases, a natural salesperson, they could kind of convince you of anything. And I see that as a true assessment of some people's personality or their communication styles. And the training gets you better. Statistic after statistic shows that when you invest in sales training, the ROI is insane.
Yeah, 1,000% agree.
Okay,
1,000% agree.
so let's get those two common things on the table. Sales training is important, and sales training is expensive, time consuming. One more thing that gets added and then taken away from. I think every business, I would imagine, knows it's something they should be doing. They might have had bad experiences in the past and might think they might have wasted their money. So, do the businesses that you work with, well, they're choosing to work with Impact and get sales training. But is that
Mhm.
something you've heard of businesses in the past having that?
Yeah.
We know we should, but
So I think we're in this really weird moment in time, and it's probably been there for the last 10 years or so, right? Where it's, while there's while there is coach or trainer led training, there is now this abundance of on demand learning that you can get to. There's an abundance of content out there. So there's all these things. And I think some organizations take learning and development and they go, here's some budget for every rep, go take some courses. Or they build out these I go back to my time in the Army when it was like we had cybersecurity training and like to be able to use a computer. And they gamified this thing. But here was the deal. They made it like a 3-hour block of time that nobody wanted to deal with. And so you'd turn it on, it would get to the point where you had to click answers, and somebody's Googling the answers, and you're going through it, right? So we were checking the box. I think a lot of organizations, especially larger ones, have gone to check the box training so that because no leader gets fired when they can show a training record, right? Like to me, that's like the mentality. And that's why we've created a lot of the problems in sales that we've got today, right? So you see that mentality. The other side is people train on tools, maybe they train on efficiencies instead of working on the things that truly help sales. So that's what I've seen. And then there's the folks that say, hey, I did Sandler sales training. I did Gap selling sales training, and it was okay. And nothing wrong with either of those two. I love both the models. But those are things that I have personally heard, and then they've come back and said, they didn't really work that well. It's not really helping us do more and be better. And so that's what I hear when I start talking to organizations, and a lot of it's because we don't focus on some of the core skills that are required to be truly amazing sales folks, which are rooted in communications training and communication skills.
It's interesting to put those 2 points together because if we're hearing in the beginning that 70% of salespeople have not had formal training, whatever you take from that, but that potentially what I hear there is that salespeople get into the field because they have a natural affinity for communication, for people, for the things that help them do that job well. At times, it can feel that some training makes them feel like they have to change who they are or change their conversation style or communication style, as opposed to enhance the skills that they already have, reflect on what they do well, reflect on what they can do better, and get some reps to improve who they are, as opposed to saying you have to sort of throw out everything you came with and start with and fit a different mold.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's true. And sometimes what we've deemed as great salespeople that are great communicators is flat out wrong. So the traditional standpoint is somebody that can pitch is a great salesperson. Somebody that can just influence and push. That's not what works today, right? So a lot of people that are really good at pitching things are drawn to sales. I'm not saying you don't pitch at all in sales, but that is one of the first things that has to get changed when we go into it, right? So when we look at the training around it, it is a transition from focusing on the organization and focusing on, quite frankly, our abilities to talk about us, and transitioning that into how do salespeople become great listeners, great interviewers who can actually discover and pull out the right bits and pieces from their buyers to help their buyers through their buying journey, right? So that's the thing that happens. And while for some that's very natural, for others it's a huge shift. And everything that is happening in the world today is leading towards you have to be that salesperson.
Right.
The days of the 1980s, 1990s salesperson, the Glengarry, what is it? Glengarry,
Glenn
Glenn
Gary, Glenn
Ross.
Ross. Yep.
Yeah, that whole always be close. Like that doesn't work today. And so we have to, like, we might have to get rid of sales training we had in the past if we want to be successful today. One of my best mentors ever said to me, Chris, the art of salesmanship is the lack of salesmanship. And that's why becoming great communicators and defining great communicators by saying people that can ask great questions, actually take people through a journey of self-discovery, those people are the people racking up numbers and wins today and helping organizations grow.
Totally agree. So let's focus on the conversation for today. How
Yeah.
can AI, which I think for a lot of people is a cloud of hundreds or thousands of tools, how can that help you do this thing, because what you're talking about is a lot of emotional intelligence, which feels very much connected to things that don't feel computer driven. But how can AI be that mirror that can help you get better?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. So let's start with probably the easiest, and then we'll work our ways back to the most complex. But trust me, gang, the most complex just means you have to do more than just show up. Okay? So the first thing that AI can do to help us from a sales training and sales improvement is when you use tools to record your sales calls. Now, tons of tools. You always hear about Chorus, you hear about Gong, there's Fireflies, there's all of these Avoma, all of these tools that record calls, transcribe them, summarize them. Okay? Some have other functions, right? But the idea is those tools show us who talked more and at what percentage. And simply knowing that allows us to coach and train. Then looking at the insights, how many, you can train these things to count ums. You can train them to look for negative sentiments. So simply by having this kind of data for then a sales leader to go look at across the board to go, we've got to talk less and listen more. That's
Right.
a quick thing that can happen
We need to
by
share our
simply,
screen less. Yeah.
oh, yeah, we can share a screen less. All of these things are AI driven tools to give us insights, right? So the hard work is set up the tool. And by hard work, I mean like buy the tool, teach people how to get it going, and then it does everything itself, right? Then you got to use it. Okay. So that's the first, and that's the easiest. The second is you can use tools like ChatGPT. I specifically use GPT-4. I believe I'm using the August 3rd edition right now. Okay. And you can use that to role play with. You can give it a scenario and tell it to act as your buyer for an individual rep to just have a conversation, role play it. You, as a sales leader, can feed it information about a deal and say, create 3 different scenarios that could play out based on this. Take those and then go role play them. And so we take away some of the trepidation around doing a role play, which is really the how do I set it up and what's the scenario. And well, you can create almost a script for the person playing the buyer, give them those things simply by feeding it out of GPT-4. Now, you have to be the human in the loop, so you got to go refine it a little bit to make sure it's doing everything that you want it to. But it sets us up to have these great opportunities to role play, which are really at the core of some of that communications training, some of that sales training that everybody just needs to.
If you're a sales leader, sales manager, hearing this, watching this, there can often be some resistance from salespeople who say, time that I don't spend selling is time that I don't spend making money. And I need to know that this is going to. So I see two sides of that. One is you sort of mandate something, but you also want to encourage and reward, or make the people who work for you see that this is in their best interests. Let them get excited about this rather than, as you said, seeing it as a chore, something they can click through and just check the box. So if you're a sales manager, knowing that this is a great opportunity, what's your next step?
Well, first off, if you have salespeople that say what you just said, John, you got to call horseshit on them right away because it's anybody with that mentality has that lone wolf salesperson mentality. And unless they're closing 90% of their stuff, they need to realize that they're not as good as they think they are. I don't care who you are. I'm a sales coach who has a sales coach who has a leadership and a communications trainer that I work with every week, right? And people pay us and me to go do that for them. So anybody that says, I just gotta be out there, everything's taken away from my ability to earn money, you're not seeing the whole picture. Okay, so that's first and foremost. But what do you have to do is you have to make the training valuable. So I go back to my story about when I was in the army. That cyber awareness training we did so that we could use our government issued computers, it didn't add to our ability to do our job. It was just somebody in the communications department of division or wherever it was checking a box for themselves to say, to make sure that we didn't do anything dumb on a government computer, right? It wasn't to add and help me be a better company commander. So when we develop training for our sales teams, we have to say, are we doing it so we check a box to report up to the board, to the CEO, whomever? Or are we saying, hey, we have this problem in our sales process. We're not closing enough. We're missing out on deals that we should win because buyers are resistant for some reason. Okay, if that's true, develop training that helps our sales team overcome that. And when you do that, and then they go start seeing wins, now they're going to want more of it. Now they're going to bring up losses that they've had. They're going to bring up conversations that didn't go as well as they wanted them to. And now you've got the people being trained bringing the content that needs to be trained on, and you can empower, and empower is maybe not the right word, but you can sort of supercharge that by getting AI to look at the thing, to look at transcripts, to ask you hard questions, to help you decide what you should be talking about in these sessions instead of starting with a blank screen if you're not a trained coach. Now, if you're a sales coach that's helping an organization do all this, you shouldn't start with a blank page either. Take some scenarios, get into it, understand it, and all the work you do in your computer when you're not with that company allows you to then just be ready for whatever they throw at you because you've done the practice on your own before you've gotten into those situations.
Yeah. And I think everything you're saying points to both the importance of this sales training as a core component of your business's success, but also to the exciting times we're living in where there is more access to better tools than ever in the past.
Yeah. And John, I don't even like the funny thing is, I don't even like to think of them as tools. Right. So it's funny. I was having this conversation with another colleague of ours, Tom DeCipio, and I said, listen, I literally talk to GPT-4 like it's another person that I'm working with. And I leverage the same communication principles that I do with our team, with buyers, with our clients, with the tool, specifically the law of three, right? So if it gives me an answer and it's not exactly what I'm looking for, I keep asking it questions. I don't get mad at it and try to come at it with some better technical prompt. I just ask it a better question, right? And so instead of looking at it as technology, I'm looking at it as an enabler. Just like if you were sitting next to me and I was trying to write something, I went, hey, John, what do you think of this sentence?
Right.
You'd give me an answer. I wouldn't say, John, taking everything you know about me and all that. I would never do that, right? So just simply embracing some of this tech and just using it like it's your pal sitting next to you is going to just really supercharge the sales training that you're doing. And every organization, not only is it sales training, but it's just communications training across the organization is key. You want to start with sales, but then you keep going and you can leverage these tools that we're talking about. You can leverage these concepts to really just make your organization that much better.
Great points, Chris. A good reminder to anyone who is listening or watching that they can always reach out to you and start a conversation about their sales team, their sales team success, or broader issues at their business of how they're going to market and how they are reaching their audience. Chris, thank you for being here. As always, appreciate the insight. And to all the sales teams out there, keep working.